Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Blount County Human Resources Committee. Before we get started, let me read the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm may sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles. Madam Clerk, will you take the roll, please?
Yes.
Let me get you here.
Mayor Mitchell?
Here.
Scott Graves? Mr. Britt? David Merle? Here. Phyllis Crisp? Here. Jared Anderson? Here. Sheriff Barong? Here. Rick Carver? Jeff Hedrick? Commissioner Hammondtree? Commissioner Crowe? Here. Commissioner Stinnett? Here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. You have 8. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we'll move to item B on the agenda, and that is the election of a chairman. At this time, I will stand for motions. I will stand for a motion to elect a chairman.
Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Stinnett.
I move to nominate Mr. Commissioner Anderson, please. Second.
I have a motion for Commissioner Anderson by Mr. Stinnett and a second by, was that David Merle? Scott Graves, sorry. Are there any other nominations? Motion has been made to seize nominations by Ms. Crisp. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Crowe. If you're in favor of seizing nominations, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. At this time, we have one nomination for chairperson. What is the pleasure of this committee? All those in favor of Commissioner Anderson serving as chair indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Commissioner Anderson, you are now chair and you may assume the position.
Thank you all. I had just told David that they didn't haze the new commissioners too bad, and y'all proved me wrong, so.
Yeah, he knew that because
All right. The chair will open up nominations for the office of vice chair of the committee. Commissioner Crowe has been nominated. Is there a second? There is a second by Mr. Britt. Nomination by Mr. Stinnett. Are there any further nominations? All right, the chair will stand for a motion to cease nominations. All right, Register Crisp has moved to cease nominations. Is there a second? All right. If there are no Okay. Everyone needs to sign in. We're going to do this vote by electronic roll call. Without objection, we're going to cease nominations, and we're going to take a roll call vote on the nomination of vice chair, and that is Commissioner Crowe as vice chair. I need to sign in. All right, committee members, please vote. All right, the motion passes, or the nomination passes. There are 9 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 1 abstention. Congratulations, Commissioner Crowe. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the setting of the agenda. The chair will stand for a motion to set the agenda. Is there a motion to set the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right. Please push your buttons on the screen where it says motion if you want to make the motion, and then second if you second it. Sheriff Brong has made the motion, and I think I heard Commissioner Hammondtree had seconded the motion to set the agenda.
You need me to say something? I just did.
All right. We will now vote on the setting of the agenda. Please vote on your screen. The motion is to adopt the agenda. All right, the motion passes with 10 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. So the agenda has been set. We'll move on to item F on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes. The chair will stand for a motion to approve the minutes. This is the minutes of the June 4th. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm out of order. We will proceed to item E on the agenda, which is public input on items on the agenda. Is there anyone present who wishes to give public input on items on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item F, which is approval of the minutes. The chair will stand for a motion to approve the minutes of the Human Resources Committee meeting from June 4th, 2018. All right, there is a motion. Could you push your button, please, if you made the motion? All right. Was that Mr. Britt who made the motion? Mr. Britt made the motion. Commissioner Stinnett seconded. Is there any discussion on approval of the minutes? Seeing no discussion, we will move to vote. Vote yes to approve the minutes, or vote no or abstain. All right, the motion to approve the minutes of the June 4th, 2018 Meeting has passed, 10 votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. We'll move on to item G, which is financial reports. Okay, that item is for information only, so we will all right. I'm going to recognize Jacqueline Johnson to present the financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet, you'll find our financial report. The report is fiscal year through September of 2018. Our accounting manager, Dina Finley, is here to speak to this report.
There we go. Okay, so in your packet, you will see the financial statement. For new commissioners, I just wanted to give you a little detail of how this is laid out. So with our Fund 264, the health plan runs on a calendar year, but we, as the county, are running on a physical year. So with this statement, we kind of chop it so that you can see how our physical year is running, but also compare the calendar year. And so at the first columns, you have all of your revenues, and those are generated from payroll deductions. And there's separate accounts for employee deductions, and then the dependent and family coverage deductions go on the next line. And then you have other revenues that are generated, for example, interest earned, which comes from the trustee's office. Then you have retirees and the COBRA payments. We separate those out, creates the detail. And then at the bottom, you have all of your expenditures. Those are your claims, your fees, health fare that we do, any expenditures that are related just to this fund. And I know it's a small print, but unfortunately it's hard to get all of this information large and on one piece of paper. And so if you flip to the second page, I'm not sure how it shows up in your packet, you'll see the last 3 columns is giving you that information of the physical year to date, comparing your revenues versus your expenditures, money coming in and money going out. And then it will give you your net position at the bottom. So as we move through the year, you can see, are our payroll deductions covering our expenditures? And as you can tell, for physical year to date right now, we have $921,068.63. That's a positive, so that means that our deductions are covering our claims for now. And then if you look at the calendar year, which is how our policy for the deductions is created and how we analyze that information, we have 2.7. And I'm sure Mr. Cole will explain more, and you guys are aware of how these claims go, is you have to look at it on a long basis of a trend for several months, because you can have, right now as we're going in, we've got October, November, December, and you're going to start seeing a lot of flu, strep, upper respiratory. I've been subject to that this last 2 weeks. So you'll see those claims fluctuate based on what's going on in our employees and staff. Do we have any questions? Okay. If you ever have questions outside of this, feel free to contact Jacqueline or me, and we'll respond to your questions.
All right, thank you very much. And now we will move on. If there's no discussion on the financial report, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the item H, discussion and possible action. Sub-item H1 is the vacation policy, and the chair is going to recognize Director Johnson at this time to discuss that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you is a proposed update to our vacation policy in the Blount County Handbook. The current policy could be interpreted in ways that it was not intended or being applied, creating confusion and frustration amongst employees, managers, and department heads. Additionally, the current policy can create a large financial liability if employees terminate employment or retire at the turn of the calendar year, just after the grant or the bucket of time was awarded to them, creating the potential for us to pay out large lump sums of unused vacation. So based on the concerns of several elected officials, I have written the proposed policy that's in front of you. The intention is to clarify the existing policy and not to change the plan for current employees. New employees, however, would have a new accrual-based plan. In this new plan, they would accrue time over the course of a year based on their anniversary date and could take time as it was earned. This will eliminate large payouts of vacation time as the vacation period rolls over to a new year, and will simplify the time being granted to these employees during their first year of employment. We're asking that you approve this revision to the vacation policy in the handbook, and also pass the recommendation on to full commission in November.
All right, before we get into questions, do we have a motion to adopt this proposed policy and forward it on to the commission, the full commission? There's a motion by Mayor Mitchell. Is there a second? Second by Register Crisp. And is there any discussion?
Chairman, I've got a question, please, sir.
Yes, Commissioner Stinnett.
Did we need to vote to accept the financial report, or just?
I don't believe so. It was only information only.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I do have a question about this, Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Stinnett.
Explain the differences again one more time. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director.
So the new policy is simply clarifying the existing policy for employees, for current employees. For new employees or employees employed after January 1st of 2019, we are moving from a bucket system where essentially when you roll over to a new vacation year, where you were granted, your 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you would be accruing that time over the course of a year. Does that answer your question?
So what happens if they don't use it during that year?
The policy would state that they could roll over up to 1 week's vacation time to the next year.
So more than 1 week they'd lose.
That's correct.
And how's that different from what we've got now?
The current policy is a use it or lose it, unless you have approval from a department head or elected official. But as it stands now, when your vacation year rolls over, you receive a lump sum of your vacation time for the year. In the new policy for new employees, you would be accruing that time over the course of a year in small increments. And you see a table that has those increments in the policy in front of you. I do want to mention also that this does not affect the highway department or the school board or the sheriff's office.
Are there any further questions or discussion? Commissioner Crowe, you're recognized.
I figure I'm held accountable for my vote. So I'm going to think out loud because that's the way I do best. I think I hear me and I verbalize it. But anyway, so the deal is, for the new employees, it's a quick no-brainer. If you want a job, you'll sign on. And I like the fact that you earn your vacation. Where you'll get your kickback, and I'm just trying to figure out if there is any kickback, is the change to present employees. So I know it's been gone over already, but would you go over one more time before I vote what it's going to do to present employees?
Sure. So there is no change to the policy for current employees. All we are doing is clarifying the existing policy because as it stands now, there is confusion during your first year of employment, how many weeks or days are granted to you when, and also there is confusion when you hit a milestone in your 11th year or your 16th year about when that additional week is granted. So the purpose of the revision is just to clarify so that there's not confusion for employees or managers when it comes to employees in that first year and hitting those milestone years. But there is no change. The policy is exactly as it was intended. We're just clarifying.
Can I follow up? Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I'm figuring if there's some confusion, that means some people have been taking advantage of the old system. So I would request that, and this is I'm just thinking about vacations because schools are totally different. But I'm thinking it would be awesome if we could let our employees know, and you probably have a system already in place, that we have clarified so there won't be confusion in the future. So when their vacation rolls around and they're told, oh, you can't do that anymore. It would be nice if we could include that. I don't know if that's possible.
Yes, we can do that. We can notify employees, existing employees. Thank you.
I was just going to clarify that Courthouse will be loading that, and that's how the employees will know that how much time they have. The problem, and we've addressed this before, as some of you will remember, if you went to work like in June or whatever of the year, then you, at the end of your 6 months, you're getting a week's vacation, and then January 1st, you got 2 weeks vacation, basically, or at your year end. So really, your first year of hire, you were getting 3 weeks vacation. But if the new employee read that, that's what it said. So we've had to honor that. The other big problem was people not realizing that they had to complete that 10th year before they were eligible to get before they could get the 3 weeks, right? And then same thing when you went in, you had to complete your 6th. But they thought, oh, I get this amount when I hit my 10th year or whatever. But you've not earned that yet. You've got to go to your 10th year. And the way the sheriff's office has got theirs by the accrual, those folks are having to earn that vacation before they take it. So that's going to work out for your new employees. And I think we're going to be clear with Courthouse for our old employees what they're getting, Theirs is going to be cut and dry. It's, just having to let them know how you have to complete the end of that 10 or in the end of that 15 years. Make sense?
All right, is there any further discussion or any further questions? All right, we were just discussing this. We're going to treat this as a motion to forward to the agenda committee or commission workshop as may be applicable after this week's commission meeting, if there are no objections. All right, seeing none, that's how we'll treat the motion. If there are no further questions or any further discussion, we will call the question. Please vote yes to approve the vacation policy and forward it to The Agenda Committee, vote no not to forward to the Agenda Committee. All right, the motion passes with 10 yes votes, 0 abstentions, and 0 no votes. Moving on, we will now discuss item H2, which is stop-loss carrier renewal. Again, the chair will recognize Director Johnson to present this item for discussion and possible action.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stop loss is different than other vendors in that we do not have they do not firm up on their rates until 60 days before the effective date, meaning that we won't have a firm quote on our stop loss rates until November the 1st. The rate quote we have now is illustrative, meaning that it can change as claims come in on a month-to-month basis up until November 1st. But with that said, Cole Harris is here from CBIZ. He's going to present the proposals and give us his recommendation, and we're going to ask that we move that recommendation onto the Insurance Committee. Once we receive the final rates from our carriers around the 10th of November, a special called meeting of the Insurance Committee will be necessary to pass this recommendation on to full commission. So.
All right, we will now recognize Mr. Harris. Please come forward, sir. And we'll turn on your microphone here. Sir, if you'll hit the button on the front of the, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good to see your faces again, and to the new folks. Nice to meet you. I'm Cole Harris with CBIZ, for those that don't know. We have been your broker since the middle of 2015, and so we've been working with you all on your employee benefits as a whole. So as Jacqueline mentioned, we're discussing stop loss. For those of you that have been here, stop loss is always towards the end of the year. As mentioned, it doesn't get firmed up till the end. I thought what would be a good idea is for us to get into Jody, I don't know if this is working. Let's see. No. You may need to click for me. There we go. So I thought we'd first get into definitions to discuss what stop loss is altogether. So you are a self-funded health plan, and so by being a self-funded health plan, that means Blount County pays the claims. So as health claims or pharmacy claims come through, those essentially are paid by your health plan, which is Blount County. It's not a fully insured care plan, which means that the insurance company like Cigna would be paying those claims. Cigna is there as an administrator, so it's through Allegiance, but they use Cigna as the network. And so they utilize, Allegiance will decide whether a claim is an appropriate claim or not, and then they pull from the Blount County Health Plan Fund to pay for those claims, which those funds were mentioned through Dina's presentation. In addition to Dina's presentation, what I'd like to say is it's always a good idea to have at least 3 months worth of claims. It's actually required. It's called the IBNR. It's your incurred but not yet reported. The best way to define this is that it's like writing a check that hasn't been cashed yet. So whenever a claim comes through, it hasn't been paid yet, but the claim has actually occurred. So it's kind of like that check is written, but it hasn't come off your book. So it's always a good idea to have at least 3 months in your health fund to cover that IBNR at the minimum. So that's where we're trying to build that fund back up, because that fund was drastically reduced a few years ago to get to the ability to cover those costs as well as any unexpected costs. Let's first get into the stop loss definitions, if you want to click forward to the next slide. So the purpose of reinsurance or stop loss is to cover your exposure on a self-funded plan. So otherwise, if you didn't have stop loss, you could have $2 million in claims on one person, and Blount County would be responsible for all $2 million of that claim. So stop loss, what we do is we have a specific deductible in place, which means that once a member, and a member is considered one individual, so if you have an employee with 3 children, each child is considered a member, or each employee is a member, okay? So once that member hits a specific deductible in claims, and your current deductible is $300,000, then that means the reinsurance carrier will pick up all expenses from that point forward. So your maximum liability for that member for the contract year is $300,000, okay? And if you haven't seen claims, prescriptions and medical claims can get up there very quick in expenditures. You have a premature baby, you could get $1 million in claims very quick. There's prescriptions out there now, some cancer-fighting drugs that are getting into the $200,000, $300,000 a year range. So this can get up there really quick. So the specific deductible helps protect you against one single member. We also have what's in place called an aggregating specific deductible. This is meant to keep costs down, and this is an additional deductible on top of the specific for the very first member that you have exceed their deductible in the calendar year. Your aggregating specific is $115,000. So what that means is that your very first member with huge claims is going to have to where they have to meet $415,000 before Blount County is covered with the stop loss. After that point, after that member is covered, then any future members, so if you have another person in your plan meet over $300,000, then it'll be covered at $300,000 forward. So you only have to meet that aggregating spec one time throughout the year as a whole. Does that make sense? Any questions? You may be familiar with what's also called an aggregate deductible, and that is kind of like an umbrella deductible. We don't have that on this plan since I've been part of you all. We haven't had that. It's essentially a deductible for your entire population, meaning that you know for certain it won't go past this amount. Most companies and governments don't have an aggregate whenever you have in excess of 1,000, 1,500 employees, because it's very unlikely that you hit that amount. So it's just kind of paying premiums for something that you'll likely never hit. Any questions on that part? Okay, let's go over into the next slide. So the initial renewal that we got back from your stop-loss carrier, and your stop-loss carrier this year is Partners RE, was 14%. Now, stop-loss insurance is different than any other insurance. I can tell you it's very frustrating to work on because it's not solely based on your experience. Now, part of your experience is part of the renewal, but a lot of it has to do with what they call their manual rates, and this is what is filed with the states, and it's all based on their entire book of business. The stop-loss markets are the same carriers that also do property insurance. And so whenever you see these huge hurricanes and things where towns are wiped out, those property insurance costs go up, which then impact their overall book of business. So everything across their block goes up. And that's what we saw last year with HM insurance when we had to move. You all had a fantastic year the year prior, but they still hit you with a 35% increase. It had nothing to do with Blount County, but that's why we had to move over to Partners RE, where we were able to get at no increase. So 35% to no increase. It's amazing, but that's how this market works. Your initial renewal, like mentioned, was 14%. You can see the different carriers we went to out to market. And we start this process in August, but as mentioned, they won't actually firm the rates until 60 days prior. So we have to have all of October's claims in, which usually come in around November 10th before they'll give us a firm number. And then at that point it'll be exact. But in the stop-loss world, unless we have something major happen, knock on wood, between now and November, these rates are fairly good. So let's go to the next slide. So this is where the marketing panned out. Amongst all those carriers, these are the best on here. I have your current and then your renewal. We were able to get your renewal down to slightly lower than current. So that's the positive. At first, they came down to 6%, and then we're able to get it slightly below. What's not listed on here is we also negotiated in what's called a return of premium provision, or it's return of profit. So if you have a great year, like you did this past year, the carrier will return 25% of the profits back to Blount County. So it could be in excess of $50,000 that you could get back if you have a great year. If you don't have a great year and the amount that you pay in is more the same as the claims paid out, then you don't get that return of profit, but at least you have a provision in there where you can get some money back if you have a good year. So I think that was something strong that we got in there. And so that's where you'll see the renewal. Your estimated annual premium is around $530,000 currently. At the renewal, it comes in right around $527,000, so a slight decrease. Creative Risk is on there as we'll find out by the end of this week, they may be open to firming up before November's released. So they're slightly above current. They do not have a return of profit, but for some reason, if the wheels fell off on Partners RE and the rates go way up, we have a fallback option. And then we also have United States Fire Insurance Company. They're an A-rated company, along with Garden State. They're both actually below your current. And you'll see they're at 7% below, which is a nice savings at $40,000, but they don't have that return of profit provision of 25%. So I'm more inclined to go with the current or with your renewal with the same carrier because you do have that ability, and for the past 2 years you would have qualified for that return of profit. So if you do have a good year, I think it's a good gamble to go with because you're not going with, it's not an increase in premium, so you still get the advantage of not paying more, but you have the ability to get much better in return if you don't go that direction. Right now, I pulled, as of today, we just got in a report showing the most recent aggregate, and of course I left it on the printer, but the highest claimant right now year-to-date is at $225,000. So you're not there. That amount could go up, obviously, between now and the end of December, but more than likely you're not going to hit the stop loss this year on that part. Any questions on that part before we move forward?
And you may have said this, Cole, on our return profit this year, what did we receive?
If you would have had it on there this year, it would have been close to $70,000.
Okay.
So.
And Partner RE does do the return profit, whereas United States Fire does not, right?
They do not, yeah. Okay. So our recommendation would be to stay with your current vendor as it will firm after November 10th, and they have the 25% return of profit. If for some reason those rates go up, so this is kind of since we don't have the firm rates, what we're requesting is that we send it in as here's what we want to happen. If for some reason that changes, then here's the next level that'll happen. If for some reason that changes, here's the third. So hopefully out of that three, one of those three occur. So if for some reason Partners RE goes up and then the others don't, then our next recommendation would be to go to United States Fire Fund, which is still a decrease out of your current. If for some reason that one goes up and Partners RE goes up, we hopefully have Creative Risk, which was formerly HCC Life, which was competitive on y'all's group about 3 years ago, as a fallback number 3. And Creative Risk right now is the only one that they're like a 0.25% greater than your current rate. So pretty much all in line with where you are currently. And as mentioned, based on the claims that I'm seeing, I don't see any reason why the rates should go up. Knock on wood, hoping that we don't have some crazy anomaly happen this month in claims. That's fine. The next part, this is actually, I found out right when I got here, so I haven't been able to change this. Cigna was there, they were proposed across the block of business of the Cigna network. They're instituting a 55 cents per employee per month increase in the access fee. When I got here, I found out we were able to get that pushed off until 2020, so this is no longer applicable to y'all. So you're in a complete rate hold on all administration. So that's no longer here. And that's pretty much my recommendations on the stop loss side.
All right, are there any questions or discussion? Mayor Mitchell, you're recognized.
Go back 2 slides. So what we're sending on to are you going to have those numbers by the time this gets to the insurance committee?
Yes, so we're going to have the insurance committee after those numbers are firmed, yes.
Okay, all right. So we're actually just sending this as a caveat that if we get all of these things that you said, like if RE does go up, or if all of there's a lot of variables that we're not really we're just sending this presentation to the insurance committee because all these numbers can be changed by the time it gets there. So we're not sending them anything in any numbers. We're just sending them. So my question is, what's the HR committee sending them if we're waiting on these numbers to make a recommendation?
So the thought process behind this was that we're sending them these numbers, and if by chance it does change and all 3 of those change, then we'd just have to come back here and have a discussion. But the thought was, while the HR committee is meeting, if we can go ahead and get that, so then we can get that ball rolling. And if no numbers do change, then we would have already had it approved by that point.
Change?
I don't. If it was normal health insurance, then yeah, I would say it's quite variable. But in theory, the only reason this should change would be like if you have a new cancer diagnosis this month or something major that they would expect you to exceed your deductible next year.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, thank you, Mr. Harris. We don't have a motion currently on the floor, so the chair will stand for a motion on this item. I think it'd probably be best to frame it as a motion to approve the proposal as set and forward to the insurance committee, but the chair will stand for any motion. All right, Commissioner Stinnett moves to send it to the insurance committee. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Hammondtree. Any further discussion or questions on the motion? All right, seeing none, we will call the question. Please vote yes to forward to the insurance committee. Please vote no not to forward to the insurance committee. Trustee Graves, do you wish to vote? All right, the motion passes with 10 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. The motion is the proposal is forwarded to the insurance committee. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is announcements and the next meeting. Are there any announcements? Please stand by. At this time, we're going to talk about and discuss availability for the insurance committee meeting. Tentative date for the Insurance Committee meeting will be November 13th at 5 p.m. So if there are no obvious defects with that plan, we will send out the public notice, or it will be sent out, and that will be the date for the Insurance Committee meeting. It's November 13th at 5 o'clock in this room. Any other announcements? That will be held next quarter, as usual. So it'll be January. Any further announcements?
It's customary for the new chairman to buy dinner. I don't have.
The chairman will meet everyone at the Crystal out on the bypass.
You can go with us to the hospital.
That's true. All right, if there are no other announcements, I'm sorry, Mayor Mitchell, you're recognized.
That's the agenda and...
It's not, it's the week before, I was just fixing it.
Huh? Okay.
You're good. It's the budget meeting. It's the budget meeting. It's the week before, it's the week before, it's the week before.
Okay. We will now go to public input on items not on the agenda. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on items not on the agenda? All right. If there are no objections, we will adjourn. We are adjourned.